Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining me this evening are Rich Allen and Jeremy Smith. The cold snap is upon us, but Ligue is here to warm you up. But before we drown ourselves in a nice cup of hot Ligue and Coca, here are the latest headlines. On Friday, Lille continued to impress, but had to come from behind to beat Amiens at home. Juan Otero put the away side in front, but Rafael Leao equalised just before half-time, and Dzeka sealed the win 5 minutes from the end. Saturday saw leaders Paris Saint-Germain enjoy their week off and come back to cut through bottom side Guingamp like a hot knife through butter as they won 9-0. Hat-tricks from Kylian Mbappe and Edinson Cavani, a double for Neymar, and an extra one from Thomas Meunier gave the champions-elect their huge victory. In the multiplex, Monaco continued to struggle as Naldo's early red card helped Strasbourg to a commanding 5-1 win. Thierry Henry could also be in hot water for insulting Kenny Lala for time wasting, which was caught on live microphones at the stadium. Toulouse managed a 1-0 victory away to Nîmes in the rest of the multiplex, while Reims were denied a win against Nice after conceding a 99th minute penalty, while on Sunday, Rennes were held by sliding Montpellier in a 0-0 draw. Marseille finally won in Ligue 1 for the first time since late November with a 1-0 result at Caen. Angers inflicted the same result on Nantes, who have their manager stating that Emiliano Sala was sold without his blessing and him questioning his position at the club, as Bordeaux have Andreas Cornelius to thank again for their 1-0 win over Dijon. In Sunday's final game, the Rhone Derby at the Stade Geoffroy Guichard did not disappoint as Lyon came from behind to beat Saint-Etienne 2-1. Hamouma had put the home side in front in the first half, but a penalty from Nabil Fekir in the second half and a late header from Moussa Dembele changing everyone's headlines as Lyon jump above their great rivals into third place. And that's all for now. But to keep up to date with all the news in the world of French football, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start this week with that Rhone Derby that has just finished. It slightly delayed our start, but we don't disgruntle that because we had a very late goal, Rich, that's changed the sort of complexion of two sides as last couple of weeks. I mean, it's a great result for Lyon. They now leapfrog Ligue into those Champions League places. It could have been a 5-point gap. It could have stayed as a 2-point gap, but instead, I'm sure Genesio will be delighted to see that his team just about, maybe a couple of handshakes for Anthony Lopez after this one as well, just about got over the line and beat Saint-Etienne.
Yeah, it was, as most recent Rhone derbies have been, it's fiery, it's atmospheric. Quality is perhaps sometimes sacrificed for pure blood and thunder, and that's exactly what we saw tonight. Saint-Etienne taking an early lead, but sort of failing to put away Lyon. Sorry, especially in that first half. Lyon then came storming out the blocks. I thought in the second half, much improved. Fekir got that penalty, but only after a terrific, I'm going to call it a triple save, even though the third one the whistler had already gone. But for a triple save from Anthony Lopez, which was one of a number of terrific saves I thought he made during the match. And then, right at the death, I'd actually tweeted during the game that Lyon were crying out for a sort of pure centre forward, and that I was hoping that with Moussa Dembele really the only one that probably fits that sort of description in the team. I was hoping he'd get the minutes, and he came on in the second half, and luckily I suppose for him, because seconds before that winning goal he headed probably a much easier chance than the one that he scored from over the bar. But yeah, his header to win it, 95th minute I think it was, terrific header. When you actually see it in slow motion, it's a pinpoint cross, but he has to leap up. I think it's between Perrin and I think it was Monaco, and literally he's got barely any room to make contact, but does. But I mean, it's hugely down to Anthony Lopez. Match-winning saves throughout the game, and it's sort of music to Genesio's ears. He was under increasing pressure. This probably won't stop that, but it at least perhaps gives him a little bit of breathing space. I think there were some statistics that came out during the week that with I can't remember how many games Lyon had won over this sort of recent spell was their worst since the early 90s. So, there's a lot of people out for Genesio. And, at least with this win, it just keeps the wolves from the door, so to speak, for a little longer. But, it was a very entertaining game, maybe a little harsh on Saint-Etienne. But it's evidence that if you don't take your chances, you will get punished, and they got punished in probably the cruelest way possible.
Absolutely, and while it eases the pressure on Genesio, I do want to highlight Saint-Etienne as well. Really, Jez, and I'm pretty sure they won't really want to hear this now, but even in defeat, you can see the improvements that they've made over the last 12 to 18 months, you can say. I mean, this time last year, they were still in a doldrum sort of 16th, 17th position, having lost Garcia. They got new management in, but it still wasn't quite trending forward until the sort of last final third of the season. But they've really come on leaps and bounds. They're much better attacking side, as they showed tonight, really, even despite the fact that Lopez had to make double saves and triple saves. It just wasn't quite going in for them, but there's certainly positives to take from this, and the run that they've been on that's got them in the position they're in at the moment.
Yeah, obviously it won't feel like that maybe tonight, but I mean, certainly if you compare it with the score last season, they lost 5-0 at home. Obviously, there's a huge difference, but it's more the fact that they are playing well, really cohesive unit. I think Sanes and Villa in the centre are excellent. Kasri's on fire. Cabello has always had that very close relationship with Gasset, and especially Patton, his assistant manager, is sort of thriving as well. And yeah, I mean, they were, in a way, they were unfortunate. I mean, I think Lyon were the better team after they'd equalised, but Saint-Etienne still had chances. And as Rich said, there was that triple save. There was a fantastic goal line clearance from Denayer just before the penalty. And then later on, there was another brilliant save by Lopez, followed by a brilliant goal line clearance or chest from Dubois. So even at the end, even though I thought Lyon were better, Saint-Etienne still were creating good chances. And if anything, I think they should probably be kicking themselves that they didn't go for the kill earlier, because I thought the first half, they sort of contained Lyon very easily. And after they scored, I'd have liked to have seen them maybe push on a little bit more while Lyon were rattled. Lyon, we discussed it a bit on Thursday. Lyon have recently got quite a good record of coming back from being a goal down, which is a frustration because their fans are wondering why they need to wait to be a goal down before playing decent football. But the fact that I think Saint-Etienne are a better team than a couple of the others that Lyon played recently and had that lead, I think they should have been capable of stretching that lead. And then I think Lyon would have been really hard pressed to come back. So I think there should be a little bit of regret there. But overall, still, is it now 1 or 2 points behind Lyon at this stage? Still, very much in the race for a Champions League place. They've got to be happy overall. But yeah, that's a bit of a sickener to me.
And maybe that's the final sort of point to make on this one, really, Rich, that for Saint-Etienne, they are still within the Champions League race, which is high expectations, really, for them. It's going above and beyond where we even could imagine they would be. But at the same time, this kind of result, does this put a big blow? I mean, it's a really tough one to take when they literally didn't really have much time to kick off. They probably shouldn't have, really. But does this put a dent in their chances of chasing that Champions League place? Do you think psychologically they may not be able to think that this was the game that would be the one that would push them over the edge? Do you think that they can still challenge for that third spot?
I don't think it's going to have. It's disappointing, obviously, and the manner in which they lost and the opposition it was against will make that feeling far worse. But Gasset has been around long enough to know how to get the team refocused. It's in a weird way, it's quite good that they've got a run of games coming up. They've got a midweek cup game and then away at Nantes, who we'll come on to later in the show. But I don't think Gasset is going to let them, let their heads drop. Ultimately, for sort of 94 minutes, they played very well. I think they came up against the goalkeeper who was just having one of those nights. I think maybe they could have really converted some of those chances, and it would have been a different outcome altogether. But as I say, I think Gasset will be key here. I think for how he gets the reaction now from the players. It's prior to that they've been on a pretty decent run. It's their first. I think it's their first home defeat of the season. So it will be disappointing, but I still think that they, there is enough there that they can keep up the charge. Now, I'm not saying that they will get a podium finish, but I don't think this is a result that will, knock them out of the picture just yet.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope this isn't too much of a blow to them psychologically, that they can bounce back with some kind of strength. Talking about teams that are bouncing back, it's probably the wrong thing to say for Monaco at the moment, really, because Jez, again at the weekend, the result comes back to them losing, and we thought they maybe turned a corner at the start of January. They had 2 decent cup results, 2 draws against tough sides, but then let's say, and I know you'll come on to this yourself, but a questionable red card, and then it's all sort of fallen apart from that moment early on. Focusing on the game for starters, it is a harsh red card, but at the same time, can that be to blame for the entire performance?
No, it can't. Definitely can't. And Henri admitted that himself. He said there's still problems, clearly in defence, especially there's big issues there. But at the same time, I do think it was I think Monaco are on such a sort of knife edge confidence-wise that it was a massive blow to start with. And as he did acknowledge, at the end, okay, they were all good finishes, but they were chasing the game. They'd have been playing differently if it had been 1-1 or 2-1 or whatever. So you can't put a 5-1 defeat down to one incident, but it was a huge incident, and it really does feel like Monaco aren't getting any breaks at the moment. I thought certainly in the first half they matched Strasbourg for a lot of it. Certainly after they came back into it, and Falcao, if he stays fit, is going to be crucial to the team. Fabregas, I didn't think played as well as last week, but I think Tielemans looks a little bit more rejuvenated. Even Golovin is mixing reasonable stuff with more crap, but beforehand it was just crap, so that's an improvement. But I think that the Naldo sending off was an absolute disgrace. It was Ayok was offside, he dived, and Naldo wasn't the last man. So apart from those 3 things, I thought it was a really, it was a good call. It was, to me, it was a joke, and it ruined the match. And Henri went on a rant after the match as well about another VAR. That one went to VAR, so I suppose you can't blame the ref entirely. But I thought as soon as that sending off happened, the ref didn't have much control over the rest of the match. He definitely should have sent Martin off for a stamp, and he only got away with a yellow. Not long after that, Mitrovic got away with a probably orange-worthy, at the very least, challenge, and then he got sent off later in the second half. Then Henri claimed that Monaco probably should have had a penalty on the hour mark, just while I think it was still 2-1. And whether he had a point or not, he was told the VAR is momentarily not working. You can understand why he feels like everything is against him at the moment. And we were talking before we went on there about a couple of incidents in recent Lyon matches. VAR, in principle, I think is a good idea, but I just don't understand how it's being implemented. You can't have matches where 1 minute it's working, the next minute it's not. And more to the point, if things are being referred to VAR, I don't understand how they're not being overturned when they're blatantly wrong decisions. Actually, in the Naldo case, the referee hadn't even sent him off, so that one, weirdly, it was overturned, but still completely wrongly. So I think VAR is a big issue, and for Monaco, I still think they should have the quality to get out of this. But as I said, they're on such a precipice based on their position, and also just it's connected, but how badly things are going. But it does feel like it takes if PSG had a poor call against them, they're going to recover very quickly. It's not going to affect them. The fact that these kind of decisions going against Monaco, and it's always the way with teams struggling at the bottom of the table, affects them a hell of a lot more. And it's not doing them any favours at the moment. But all that said, 5-1 is not good enough.
Yeah, absolutely, and the pressure is mounting on Thierry Henry, really, Rich, and we've mentioned sort of the VAR stuff and the rants and raves, but there's also possibility that he might get in trouble for things caught up on the microphone during the game of him speaking to Strasbourg right back Kenny Lala and calling some unsavoury things in that moment as well. Is Henry maybe looking at some punishment there? I know me and Jez were talking beforehand that, remembering from at least English point of view, I remember Wayne Rooney being suspended for something seen on camera or spoken on camera, at least anyway. He might be under trouble there. Is it starting to get to him?
I think without a doubt it is. I think the seriousness of the situation has hit home. I think the impact that those above him, board level at Monaco, were hoping that he would have by coming in and sort of inspiring some of the players hasn't worked out. His inexperience is showing. He's not able to get motivation from these players. They're not looking up for it. Senior players don't seem to be responding to what he's saying. The young players just seem to be sort of rabbit in headlights almost. And yeah, there's sort of now cracks appearing in Henry's attitude as well. He's been more vocal in the sort of criticism of his players. He's now sort of losing his cool on the touchline during games. He's ranting and raving. There's justifications for some of them. Certainly the ranting and raving in his press conference, I think there was huge justification, but it's all signs that the pressure is getting to him. I think he probably will be in a little spot of trouble with regards to his touchline outburst at Kenny Lala. It's sadly, I think it's just inexperience showing. I think it's obviously something that's new to him, and unfortunately for Rybolovlev, it's a case of, well, sort of probably people could have told you so with this appointment, that the problems that Monaco were in prior to Henry's appointment, you were always going to run the risk of something like this happening, that the inexperience and freshness doesn't it works against him. And that's proving to be the case. You've seen recently that Frank Passy has been brought on board to sort of assist Henry. You wonder at what point are they going to have to make a decision on Henry's future. We're now coming towards the end of the transfer window. Monaco have been certainly one of the more active teams in Ligue. Unsure as to whether their business will be finished, but obviously once that's closed, then that's the squad. That's the squad that's basically got to turn things around and get out of this mess. Now, if Henry is not the man to take that squad and get them out of that mess, now's the time, really, you've got to look at pulling the plug. It's now whether those above him want to sort of openly admit and risk looking the fools for appointing him in the first place and taking that risk when really that kind of risk didn't need to be taken. They were far more experienced, far more probably well-suited candidates for the role. But they didn't take that option. They went for a name, and in an ideal world, it would have been a nice story for Henry to come back to Monaco and sort of be the hero riding back into town. But that's not happening. And the players are now not responding. Henry is cracking. I really fear that Monaco are going to. I'd love to have seen this worked out. I really would have loved to have seen this work out, but it's not. And for Monaco's short-term future, never mind long-term future, for Monaco's short-term future, I think they're going to have to make that decision to perhaps look at giving Henry the axe.
I'm not sure yet. I mean, I think Henry's been doing this since he took the role. I don't think it's any worse now. I mean, the thing that was caught on camera, I assume, is the kind of thing that coaches and subs and everyone on the sideline say all the time. And I think maybe the fact that it was at the Stade Louis II, where there's absolutely no fans to drown out what people are saying, was the problem there. And, the 11th commandment is don't get caught, so he'll probably get a fine for that. But I think maybe it's reading too much to say that that's cracking. I think the bigger worry was that he looked close to tears at the end of the match. But it is a learning curve for him, and I agree that it was a big risk, Monaco taking him on. But I think partly because of the lack of fans and the fact that Monaco are in such a strange position, sort of not quite French and different tax position and everything, they've always been a sort of club apart, and they've always been a bit of a showbiz club. So it does follow the sort of long-term Monaco model to have a big player like that with all the risks, or a big ex-player like that with all the risks that come with it. And I certainly think it could really come back to bite them. But at least for the moment, they are still only, I think, 3 points from safety. And I do think it's a learning curve for Henry as much as anyone else. And I think they should stick with it a little bit longer. But it is a concern that they're still sort of failing to launch. But at the same time, Strasbourg are a very good team in very good form. So it's possibly also harsh to put it all down to everything going wrong at Monaco. Maybe we should give Strasbourg a bit more credit as well.
Absolutely, that's a very good point to make. Just that they've been terrific, really. Strasbourg in fifth now as well. I'll briefly come on to them in a moment at least. But I just want to say I think Thierry Henry is out of his depth. I think he's got 2 very big weeks coming up. He's got the cup game against Metz in midweek. He's got Dijon away, the team that are just above them at the moment, Guingamp in the cup, and then just at the start of February he's got Toulouse just as the door shuts. If they don't get out the bottom 3 by then, you start to worry because the big fixtures start piling up again. Then you've got Montpellier in a couple of weeks after that. You've got Lyon, there's Bordeaux, Lille. It all starts mounting up again. And at the moment, there's only 3 points gap at the moment. But these teams are all going to start facing each other now, and then those games are going to start to mean there's going to be a different kind of gap. There's going to be Guingamp maybe coming back up, although they had the big loss at the weekend. They did make some ground in midweek. There's all these things, these factors that will start catching up on them if they don't pull their finger out and do something about it. And at the moment, it's not like Thierry Henry is the man to do that. But just to mention on Strasbourg, really, Rich, they have been terrific this season and are in a great position. 32 points. They're not going to be anywhere near any relegation trouble. In fact, they might even challenge for European positions. And they've actually done a little bit of extra business this week. We've had a bit of a quieter week. We had a couple on sort of midweek that we discussed on Thursday, but they've brought in Samuel Grandsir from Monaco, ironically, to get him on loan, to get him some game time. But it seems like quite an interesting transfer for Strasbourg more than Monaco, because he's possibly a player that could add an extra bit of spice up front for them.
Yeah, exactly. He made his breakthrough at Troyes, got moved to Monaco, has looked fairly reasonable when he's played for Monaco, but not really been given the game time to develop. So, it's a good move for him. He's coming into a team that's full of confidence, that are really, I think, could very well suit his style of play. But Strasbourg as a whole, one of the league's success stories so far this season. The job that Thierry Henry has done with that team. I was looking into their results, and since the end of September, they've only lost 2 games in the league, which is, it's crazy. It really does highlight what an excellent job. In Kenny Lala, we've got, I think we're probably all in agreement. The right back of the league so far. And at some point, as crazy as this may or may not sound, at some point we're going to have a conversation as to where he fits in the player of the season so far. Never mind just defensive. He continues to put in performance after performance. And I think the only concern is, we've still got a few days left of the transfer window. You know, he has been linked with moves to the Premier League. I think the clubs that he's been linked to, I think arguably would be doing very well to get him, because I think, yeah, okay, he's 20, 27, 28, I think, but you know, he could be pitching at a higher level than those clubs. No offense to those clubs, really, but he could be pitching at a higher level. And you know, if we go back to the game on Saturday evening against Monaco, the pass for I think it was the opener. Was it Ajorc's opening goal? I think it was the long ball pass. You genuinely won't see a better pass, a better assist than that this season, because the confidence that he's got to have pinged that pass, to have found Ajorc. Bearing in mind, Ajorc had a couple of Monaco defenders around him, but you know, this was a sort of, you know, 40 plus yard pass, and it was absolutely on a postage stamp. It really was. But it's a player that's playing at the top of his game. But Laurie has got, you know, a number of these Strasbourg players playing at the top of their game. And so, you know, the only way is up really for Strasbourg. You know, they've gone on such a fantastic run, confidence flowing through the side. They got a semi-final in the Coupe de la Ligue. There's no reason why they couldn't win the competition, to be perfectly honest. So it's really great to see, you know, and let's not forget, you know, how fresh they are to the league and all the troubles that well-documented troubles they've been through in the last few years. It really is fantastic to see.
Absolutely, and credit to them, and it's going to be a really interesting race. There's a couple of teams there, 32, 32, 31, all the way down to 9th, with Rennes still on 30 points. It's going to be an interesting race to see who does get the European places this season. Onto a team that should be aiming in that direction, but this week has been probably the worst in a long while for Le Canary fans, really. It's been after the sort of defeat in the derby last weekend. They lost in midweek. They lost on earlier today, as well as losing Emiliano Sala, who has joined Cardiff now, and it got all a little bit strange really this week, Jez. I mean, the manager Sami Halilhodžić has been saying that he's considered quitting. Salah was sold without his permission, really. Vladimir Karte had decided pretty much that the money was too good to turn down. And in ways, if you look at the reporting of it, at least anyway, almost forced to move himself more than Cardiff even wanted the player, really. And it ends with a defeat now that means also this week, without him, they haven't scored a goal in 3 games. Alarm bells, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we all have our mixed opinions on Salah. I'm still not absolutely convinced about him. He's had a real purple patch up till now, although he hasn't actually scored since early December. And you know, even though there's been a winter break, that's still been a few matches now without scoring. But you know, rightly or whatever, irrespective of that, he is and has been by far Nantes' only real goal threat this season. And I'm sure there's a bit of kidology going on, but Keita did give an interview 2 or 3 weeks ago saying we're in a perfectly fine financial position. We don't need to sell him. So him going ahead and selling him is really sending a negative message out in terms of the playing side of things. I understand that you know, Salah's not getting any younger. He may revert to previous not so good forms. So while there's a lot of interest, I can understand why they'd want to cash in, but surely the main reason why you're running a football club is to try to, unless you're Monaco maybe, is to try to look for footballing success. And certainly if you're bringing in a very sort of football-minded man like Halilhodžić, who you know has never been short of enemies for his opinions. You know, if you make the decision to bring him in, then you should be wanting to try to keep him happy. And the whole situation has become really messy. I mean, he was very clear from the start that he didn't want Salah sold. And as you said, I mean, Salah didn't particularly seem that keen on going, certainly to Cardiff. And actually, I thought Nantes' official account, when they confirmed it, the wording was quite interesting. It basically said Salah has chosen to leave or something like that, which I wouldn't be surprised if Keita had something to do with that behind the scenes. trying to push the blame onto the player rather than himself. But to me, I mean, I can understand why Halilhodžić would see his position as untenable, because he's, first of all, he knows what he's talking about as a non-striker, having been a very successful one himself. He knows that he's pretty much the only goal threat that the team seems to have, and having said to his own president, please don't sell the one player who can sort of help us win matches, for the president to do that, I could very much understand Halilhodžić walking, because unless they bring in someone within the next 2 weeks, you struggle to see how they'll still be sort of tough defensively as they always are, but you struggle to see how they're going to get the goals to push them any further up the table. And they're only 6 points off the relegation playoff place at the moment, and there are teams below them who do have goal threats, and which could buy them cheap points, which Nantes are going to struggle to get. I think it's a really messy situation.
Yeah, because a couple of results just puts them in the bottom, and it gets stranger, this story, really. I mean, when you take back that Salah wasn't particularly fond of going anywhere there, he wanted to play European football, and that's no offence to Cardiff, but I understand why any player that's in January possibly not really wants to go for a relegation fight unless he thinks he's going to get bigger wages, and then that's kind of what happens. That's why it stalled last week, reportedly, that Cardiff were wanting to change the deal slightly and ended up paying slightly less and then giving the player more wages, it seems like, Rich, which sort of mutes Kaitis' argument, really, of sort of doing something a little bit different, of trying to maybe feeling like he can cash in if he's asking for less, because I also feel like if you give this play, it's not like it'll be. I think it's out of the realms of possibility that Salah could have scored 5 more goals, but it would put him on 17 for the season, which would still put him in the window in the summer for maybe even bigger teams to go for him and possibly even bigger cash offers potentially. They never really know, at least anyway. But at the same time, it's not the first time he's caused friction with a manager. It probably won't be the last, but it's also one of the reasons why not keep going from a really great team into a really poor team into a really great team, and they keep fluctuating.
Yeah, he seems to run it almost as his own sort of vanity project, it seems. He's the reason where they are, and when I say that, I mean that for good reasons and bad reasons. For the positives that he's done for the club, you can't knock it, but if it also, he's done plenty of negatives that have kept them this sort of struggling team that's really got a lot more potential and really should be showing a lot more potential. So he is a very curious character. You speak to Nantes fans and it's fairly mixed in terms of their attitude to him. I honestly, I would have expected them to have certainly been a lot more angry at him, but they seem, far more interested to sort of look at players or look at coaches. Now this Salah one, now if this comes back to bite and face a calamitous second half of the season, which, going by the results so far this calendar year anyway, looks to be that's a distinct possibility, then I would fully expect that kind of attitude to be squarely that is squarely at the blame. Blame lies purely with Keita there. It was just a curious one, as you say. He didn't need to be sold. He'd have gone in the summer. They'd have probably got, at the very least, the same amount of money. Yeah, as you say, again, he'd have got. I'm not his biggest fan, but yeah, he would have got 5 or 6 more goals. I'm fairly confident of that. But instead, Keita has cashed in. He's trying to manipulate this into a situation that was beyond his control, which is seems to be an out-and-out lie. I think Nantes fans are probably sensible enough to see through that, and really leaves Nantes in a really difficult situation. They're now without their main source of goals, pretty much their only source of goals. Pressure is on then in the next less than 2 weeks to bring in a replacement. The players they've been linked with are hardly names that would fill Nantes fans with a great deal of hope. And then you look at the fixtures, and you look at February for Nantes. It's a massive month. They're away at Caen, they've got Nîmes at home, away at Monaco, and then finish with the Derby d'Atlantique at home to Bordeaux. First game of March as well as away at Guingamp. They are huge games for Nantes because they are sliding. Their form is not good. They're losing games that probably on paper they'd be expecting to win. Weirdly enough, probably the game that they did win recently was probably the game they didn't expect to, which was at home to Montpellier. But it's not a good time, and if you're a Nantes fan, you'd probably be feeling quite nervous, quite uncomfortable as to what the rest of the season is going to have in store for them.
Yeah, just again where you think that they may be under new management, we're going to go in the right direction, and it all turns back again with the owner doing something a little bit crazy. And like you say, Rich, looking at the striker list here that we've got on GFFM from France Football, really, I mean, Facundo Ferreira was one that's linked with a couple of clubs in France, the Benfica striker, not really lighting things up. There's Andres von Bergar, who plays for Olimpia Ljubljana in Slovenia, who scored 10 goals in 16 games, but Slovenian sort of league, what sort of rate is he going to do in Ligue? Same with another one, George Tushilan, who's plays for Cluj in Romania. They just seem sort of fighting for sort of something, at least anyway. But we might talk about another striker that they're looking at, and a few French teams are looking at us, because we're going to go on to transfer rumours now, because it's always that time in January that we look at some of the news that's been happening. And we'll start with Paris Saint-Germain after that big win and that great camel riding session in Dubai over the week, while everyone else throws themselves in the extra games being played back. They're looking for a midfielder. That's always been something they've been looking for a while, Jez, and there's plenty of names on the list. So what I wanted to do is I'm going to give you all the names that we have so far, really, and pick one that you would have in that Paris Saint-Germain midfield. So the names are Abdoulaye Doucouré, who we discussed last week, Julian Weigl, Leandro Paredes, who's also been linked with strongly, really, with Chelsea as well in English media. Idrissa Gueye, who is the supposed front runner. We're supposedly the hold up is that Everton also want Doucouré, but Doucouré wants PSG, so there's a mix up there. But also, sort of as a backup option, is Celta Vigo midfielder Stanislav Lobotka, who I'm a big fan of, but it might be a little bit of a step up. But out of those 5 names, really, who do you think would be best in Paris Saint-Germain's midfield and help them towards the Champions League right now?
For me, I mean, it's partly because I've seen more of him than any of the others, to be fair, and also he's got lots of Ligue 1 previous. I think Idrissa Gueye is the ideal player for them. A lot of Everton fans are saying, yeah, great, he can do the tackling and the intercepting, but he can't pass. I think PSG have got enough players who can do the attacking side of things. I think what they really miss is just a very, very simple shield in front of the defence. It might not be the most attractive or popular or exciting position, but it's, I've always said, I think practically any decent team who's ever won any trophy has had a decent player in that position. And I still think it's the one thing that could leave PSG unstuck. The fact that they're either playing Verratti there, who I don't think is a great defensive player, or Marquinhos, who is still not 100% convincing there and isn't happy playing there, I think is still a concern for them. And I think if they had a player like that there, obviously irrespective of what you said, of the sort of chances of him coming or all the other knock-on effects, I think if they had him there, then the front players, certainly the front midfield players, people like Draxler, who are, I think, playing really well this season, but a little bit held back by defensive responsibilities. I think all of them would be free to support the front three even more, and then I think they'd be more or less, I still think, occasionally the centre backs go to sleep and the left back is still slightly weak, but they'd be more or less a complete team. And then I think you'd be putting them even further up the sort of list of favourites for the Champions League. Players like Doucouré, I think, are absolutely superb, but I don't think they need someone like that, because he can do things that other people in the team can already do. So I think Gueye is the one who absolutely fits the one role that they're really missing.
Rich, I'll give you the list as well to give your opinion on one that maybe do. So Decore, Weigl, Paredes, Guy, and Lobotka as well. Who I quite like, but I don't really think he's the profile. He's definitely supposedly a secondary option. There's other clubs, including a couple in England, that are looking at him. But who would you choose in this sort of January window to bring in?
I would agree with everything that Jez said about Idrissa Gueye. If I was PSG and I'd be having, my pick of those players, I'd probably come down ever so slightly on the side of Julian Weigl. I think he's long been highly praised in the Bundesliga. Tuchel has experience of working with him before. I think possibly the most important factor in all of this that why I think it's probably going to be a non-starter is Dortmund have come out today and said he ain't leaving. Now, whether that's that's a bargaining move as to try and increase the money that PSG put for him remains to be seen. But if we take that is what they mean and they'll stand by it, then obviously that's going to be a non-starter. But if I'm PSG, he'd probably be the player I'd go for. Failing that, I think Idrissa Gueye is a fit. Big fan of Doucouré. But as Jez said, I think that style of midfielder they don't overly need. I think Doucouré has spoken a lot very recently in basically an open advert, I think, for his open interview, for PSG, and saying, oh yeah, my favourite position is defensive midfield. I don't necessarily think that's his best position. I think he needs, he's very much box to box, I think, is where you see the best of Doucouré, and PSG don't need that. PSG needs someone just to sit in front of that defence, and that I don't think is a role that would suit Doucouré. And I think there would be slightly better players that PSG could bring in, and I think Idrissa Gueye, as Jez and yourself have mentioned, is certainly probably very near, if not at the top of that list.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can see why, really. But I don't know. I'm probably being a little bit cheeky on this one, but I would maybe think of a Doucouré, a Weigl, or even a Lobotka, but just because they can play several different positions. Because my standing would be is that for Paris Saint-Germain, they don't need it for the league. Are they really going to win the Champions League with an extra player like that this season? Possibly not. But at the same time, in the summer, would Conte be available? Would that be an option for them? Where maybe get a midfielder that's an extra option now, and then really go for a push for that in the summer?
Well, the other thing, of course, is Frankie de Jong.
Yeah.
And all news seems to be indicating that PSG are front runners there. That de Jong wants to join PSG. That Antero Henrique and Maxwell have been to Amsterdam, have met with de Jong's agent and looking to sort of finalise contract details before the clubs then agree a fee. If PSG are going to be going for that, that's probably going to be in that 75 million euro region. Are PSG mindful of, well, yes, we do need a midfielder now, but we also don't want to be spending a fortune because we're going to be spending a fortune in the summer to bring de Jong in. So, as crazy as this sounds, we may be in a situation, and certainly they risk the ire of Thomas Tuchel of not even bringing in a midfielder this transfer window, and you'd feel that it's almost a case of, well, do they sort of almost sacrifice the Champions League this season with a view to bringing, being able to bring de Jong in next season, in the summer, and have that more complete squad for a Champions League run next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see if they do try and make a move. Some quick fire ones, really, that I'm going to throw to you both. And I'm going to start with yourself, Jez, because there's a lot of clubs looking at Valère-Germain, really. And Nantes and Nice have both been linked with the Marseille forward, even though he's only scored 3 goals this far this season. But he has shown at times, both at Monaco and previously, Les Aiglons, that he can grab goals in Ligue 1 for you. But at the same time, clubs are sort of shying away from the big salary that he's on at LOM, and Marseille wanting the entire salary paid if he is going out on loan. Is that probably going to be the stumbling block that stops teams from going for him this summer, for January?
Well, I think the stumbling blocks are the two things that you said. Firstly, the cost, and secondly, the fact that with the best foot in the world, he's not a prolific goal scorer. And the teams that are looking for goal scorers won't necessarily be confident that he's going to be the answer to their problems. I actually could see him being a success if he went back to Monaco and being a striking partner for Falcao. I've just seen a report that Batshuayi to Monaco looks like it's a little bit closer, so I'm not sure they'd be bringing both of them in. But like I've said the whole time at Marseille, I think part of Germain's problem is Garcia's insistence on playing one up front, which I just don't think suits him at all. I don't think it matters that he's not a prolific goal scorer, because I think his intelligence allows other players the space and the time and the possession to have more chances themselves. If he went to Nice, it would be nice for him to go back there where he had a very good season. But again, without Balotelli, unless they bring in another striker, I don't know who he'd be playing with. I can't see that there's any other decent strikers at Nice at the moment that he could be a good fold for. At Monaco, I think he would work with Falcao. But we mentioned Nantes earlier. Same thing. It would just be him. No one for him to play off. So, Monaco aside, I can't see any obvious place that he would be going to.
Yeah, and that's not going to be helped by the big money that Marseille have invested in him. Other way around this time, so an English side coming through, but Maxwell Cornet has reportedly rejected a move to Watford. Really, if they were preparing an offer for the Ivorian, and he does want more first.
Because they already played Man City twice.
Yeah, that's maybe the only reason he might join him. But despite the promises of more game time in the Premier League as well, Dan Leon and offer him a considerable salary hike. He's not falling into that trap, you may say, at least, Rich, of going to Watford. But a good club at a good level at the moment. But is it maybe too much of a step down for Cornet?
Well, I think that's it. I think he's. I think there's obviously a little bit about him that would perhaps think himself, well, I could move to a better club. Now, performance-wise, there's not really a huge amount to back that up. I think what he's probably trying to architect is that, I'm the guy that, single-handedly saw off Man City and hoping that would be enough to secure him a move to a bigger team. It strikes you as perhaps as a little bit of a silly move. You look at someone like Abdoulaye Doucouré. He moved to Watford. It took him, a season or so to settle in. He was obviously on loan as well over in Spain. But all of a sudden now, he's linked with the likes of PSG. He's linked with big teams. It wouldn't. I don't think it would necessarily do Cornet. I think it would actually do him the world of good to move to a team like Watford. Go to Watford, show everyone that actually you are a talented player, that Lyon were wrong to let you go and not play you, and then ultimately use Watford as the springboard to the bigger team that I think he probably thinks he should be playing for. But it transpires that he's not going to, or at the minute anyway, he's not going to be doing that. Now, whether that's a ruse to try and get Watford to offer more money for him from a salary perspective, and we'll see. But I think Lyon seem willing to consider letting him go. Watford aren't the first team to have been linked with him. He's been linked with moves to Germany as well. I don't necessarily think it's the end. I think there's a little bit more to come in this transfer window with Cornet. That Lyon are never are not a team that are going to turn down a good deal. So if they can get 15 to 20 mil for a player like Cornet, I think they'd probably snap a team's hand off.
Yeah, absolutely, and I wouldn't really blame them. To be fair, I think he maybe needs to take something like an opportunity like that. I think while he thinks that Watford's maybe a step down, at the same time, a lot of players vis-a-vis I'm thinking Xherdan Shaqiri can take that step down, even have a few years at the club and still get the move that they really desire in the end of it. Just to finish, a couple of ones that Championship fans will be keeping their eyes on. So I'll throw one at each of you, and I'll start with Leeds United looking at Dijon midfielder Mehdi Abeid. Jez, he's obviously spent some time in England, but I'm pretty sure many Newcastle United fans won't quite remember the Algerians' form for them between 2013 and 15. But a solid performer for a Dijon side that are struggling, and they're looking to offload him because he would be out of contract in the summer. So they might be an eager side to sell as well.
Yeah, I think he had a very good season last season. I think that along with a lot of the team this year, he hasn't looked as good. But I think he's a quality midfielder, and I could see him. He has been in the news a lot this week. I think he'd fit in very well in a team that likes to play quick passing football. I guess he's sort of mid-20s now. He's got to decide what his priorities are. Is it a payday? Is it a little bit of stability for the best football in the world? I'm not sure Leeds is the club for that. I don't think they are anyway. They certainly any team coached by Bielsa, I think by definition isn't stable. So I'm not sure it's the most sensible move halfway through the season. But then obviously the other consideration is that should Dijon go down, his stock may well go down if he's looking to move in the summer. So yeah, I think if it's down to him, I think it's a case of just deciding what his priorities are right now. But certainly I think he's got the quality to come good in the Championship, even though it didn't work out in Newcastle.
Absolutely, and Aston Villa fans, Rich, they supposedly approached Cole for Frederick Gilbert. Supposedly their agent his agent has made that sort of clear that they've sort of tried to get in touch of things, and supposedly Con are not intending to sell him, at least anyway. Sounds like they've been listening to me for the last couple of weeks, saying that he might be sort of a really great budget option for someone. But Con player that's even played centre back this season as well for them. Would he be a good signing for Villa?
I think he'd be a very good signing. I've been a reasonable fan of Gilbert since his time at Bordeaux, and I did find it curious that Bordeaux decided to let him go. I think he's a very good player. I think if Villa can get him, and by the sounds of it, it's not a huge amount. I think 4 or 5 million was a figure that I'd seen. Which if that's the case, that's a super bit of business, I think, for Villa. Perhaps don't watch the game from earlier on today where he was sent off. But no, I think a really good player. I think he would be a good fit for Villa. I think speaking to a couple of Villa fans, they seem quite desperate to get a right back on their books because the likes of, still relying on the likes of Alan Hutton don't necessarily sit comfortably with a team sort of trying to push for promotion. So I think Gilbert would be a very good signing if Villa can pull that off.
Yeah, absolutely. So unsurprisingly for me, I couldn't agree more. Really, I think a couple of teams, especially at that quoted price, people. I do love Kenny Lala, and I think he is someone that would be able to play at that ability. But I was saying that the teams that are being linked with him, like the Newcastles of the world and others, why not Frederick Gilbert? He's a terrific defender. He's only 24, so he's younger as well. Can play centre back. Has been a rock for Con for the last couple of years. Creates goals, gets back, can defend. I don't see any argument of why you shouldn't really throw your hat into the pot for him if Con would listen to some kind of offer for him. Just before we go, very quickly then, gents, we'll go on to our snapshots at least anyway, and I'll start with yourself on this one. Jez, what's your Ligue snapshot?
We touched on it earlier, but I just want to give a bit of a shout out to Leo Dubois, who really hasn't had a great time since he's been at Lyon. But I think he was crucial to their win tonight. Fantastic goal line block, and then deep into injury time, perfect cross to Dembele, which he heads over, gets another chance 30 seconds later, another fantastic cross, which this time Dembele puts away. So I just thought, it's quite nice to see Dubois having something go his way for once this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Rich?
Mine's just a very quick stat one, really. Rennes 0-0 draw with Montpellier today was their first 0-0 draw for 66 games, which went back to March 2017, and their first 0-0 draw at home in 83 games, which went all the way back to March 2015. So it was a record that, weirdly, a number of Rennes fans were quite proud of. They don't have much to cling to, do we, really? But it was a game. I mean, fairly entertaining for a 0-0 draw, but sadly, that's not a record that Rennes hold anymore. So just that one from me.
Yeah, at least they'd not wasted their money for the last couple of years, really, the Rennes fans, with at least someone scoring, depending on what game it was. I'm surprised Jez didn't go with his slight annoyance of the Paris Saint-Germain team getting a bit of a week off while everyone else had to slog away in the cold Wednesday nights, at least.
That was my other choice, but you touched on it earlier, but I think it's an absolute disgrace.
Yeah.
And I said it at the time, and I think what happened this week proved it.
Yeah, and my Ligue snapshot, it's maybe a bit of a personal one more than anything, really, but I'm quite glad that I cashed out on the Reims-Nice game, because that annoying penalty on the 99th minute would have cost me a fair bit of money. So thank you for the cash out button more than anything, and not the Ligue referees. But that's all that we have time for this evening. My thanks to Rich, Jez, and all of you listening at home. To join us for the preview show, which will be back on Thursday, and the main show will be at the same time, same place, next week. A bientôt, and goodbye.